Hmm. All right, we should be all live. This is way before what I was expecting to go live on. Let me make sure I can hear this. I'm in the wrong. Nope, never mind. I just had that muted. All right, let me see. Let me check. Let me make sure. Which I think would be cool. Okay, so I'm going live like pretty much like 40 minutes earlier than I thought I would go live today. Mainly just because this is a interesting slate, and I was already doing stuff for the slate yesterday, which I just figured I'd go live. If you guys have any questions or whatever, I mean, I'm probably going to be here at least like probably an hour and 20, hour and 15 day because I haven't made any lines. I just uploaded my projections, but with how drastically different, and so another aspect of this, hold on. So let me get here. Let me share my screen. So another aspect was typically I don't, not that they're bad. If anything, like negative comments are usually good because they highlight either what is going wrong or what people don't like and stuff. Now this isn't the main reason, but typically I do this anyway. But anyway, so I got this comment yesterday, right? And I was like really surprised at like this type of um situation of how somebody at least has like this opinion. Not like I understand like if they lose money or whatever, right? But I don't understand how this opinion is formed, mainly because like I didn't lose money on the slate yesterday. Um like these are like when I'm going back and looking at where, how I played or whatever, and the projections that are given out, like it's different if like the product that people are paying for like equals and like obviously like if it misses or whatever. But just I was very very curious on how that opinion was formed. And in doing that, I just ended up or not doing that, but like looking back at how yesterday's race went, there's a lot of rockiness around like today's starting grid. Like obviously, also Catherine is racing for JJ or whatever. For those that don't know, also Sabersim still has Connor projected to lead laps. Like whatever. Like I'll get into this in a second, but like our this starting grid is so ugly. Obviously we lose Connor. Parker, Sanchez, Casey Kane, Williams, Wallace, Jones here, right? And what I was doing, like obviously I have my projections up right now for today's slate, but I was really curious on what exactly happened yesterday's slate. So yet again, and I do apologize. I'm re-recording the tools video at the advice of sheets, which that'll be up. Now, granted, I use a lot of these tools on these shows already, so most people know how to use them. But this is a great, at least today, like this will be me actually using the tool of how I normally do it. So, like first and foremost, typically, like you pull your CSV thing here, and I mainly wanted to see what type of builds people went with and stuff. And so the Jack Wood and Dawson Sutton, which yet again I'm not playing as much right now, mainly because I just paid several thousand in taxes and stuff, and I'm mainly moving everything towards um Talladega next week. But granted, whatever I played or whatever, but Jack Wood and Sutton together were popping off in nearly every thing that Saberson was giving me in terms of highest projected lineups, in terms of ROI or whatever. And I decided to try and get at least more different. Um, and as we discussed, we didn't need to necessarily punt. Even now, granted, I believe Boyd is optimal. Looking at the end results, so we have Boyd and Bird, both at 44 and 43. Anyway, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm especially in a slate that goes as haywire as yesterday's goes with the amount of carnage and stuff being taken out and stuff. Um, I mainly want to see how people built for that ended up, being optimal or working out or whatnot and stuff. And what was even more interesting was um, Corey Hyman and Garcia's projection. I mean, Garcia really specifically, he was not projected on anything at all to eclipse like 25% ownership. And obviously, if we're looking at, which we'll go ahead and open this one up in a new tab. Now you might be like, why am I doing this for a Xfinity Series race or whatever, right? Well, one, we have 2 hours before the slate starts. Two, I haven't made my lineups yet. Three, I'm more so curious on how does yesterday's slate happen from a DFS perspective. Let's see if this is gonna run here. So like yesterday's race, which yet again, super instant, we pull straight from NASCAR and stuff. So like there was real situations here to where like you had Smith, you had Lane. I'm mainly trying to figure out what exactly happens if Garcia doesn't perform nearly as well as he did. So with my thought process yesterday, which we did see towards the end of the race, to where once people were done wrecking, and we went to the green, we went to the end of the race green. Obviously turning the field, but like the leader, Corey Heim was ran away, et cetera, et cetera. It was Heim. I if I remember correctly, Gio, which we could probably go back, and then like obviously like Chandler Smith takes the lead over, runs out of gas and stuff with Ankrum and stuff. But how does the slate change if Garcia doesn't do this? So like when I'm looking back at yesterday's stuff, right? Like I had Garcia for 29 points, which I don't believe I didn't really project him to lead laps. I had, if anything, other people around him taking over the lead here. And the reason why this is so important to me to figure out is because when we're looking at today's race, obviously we lose Connor, right? So Parker and Nicholas, like obviously we lose the pole sitter, but Nicholas doesn't move up to be able to start the race. Okay, we go on green flag conditions here. Like Nicholas does, yeah, sure, he inherits the inside pole, but he doesn't have the control car here. And even if he did, when we're looking at like Casey Kane and Sanchez together now, Sanchez was very quick yesterday in practice and stuff, but like this race is going to be decided on the long run. And when we look head to head between these lap times of Sanchez and Casey Kane here, um, I am much more willing to believe in the speed that Casey Kane would have. Specifically, like when we look at, and I know there's discourse over how good Casey Kane is. What is it? And so on and so forth. But like Junior hops into these cars and like kicks the shit out of the field. Okay. Eric Amarola, like who was like washed up and bad in the Cup Series. Like he shows up and destroys these children, these literal infant children who like have literally no experience in real cars, right? And to show up and be that fast and be that consistent, like in a Hendrick car, I mean it's RCR, but like I mean in a top of the line of what Hill has been able to do, what Jesse Love has been able to do, and then compare that with where everybody's been running at, with where like obviously like this is on it. Like if Connor was starting first, we'd probably all love Connor, right? Like he'd project for like 80 laps led or whatever, right? You look at where Parker typically runs. You look at where Nicholas typically runs, right? You then look at like where William is, which has been a disappointment. You then look at like where Jones is at, and so like all these guys up front are very much question marks for today's race. And so like under trying to at least looking back at like how yesterday's contest, and yet again this isn't how I necessarily like check or whatever, but this is just me kind of comparing where kind of things played out yesterday specifically of the people that I enjoyed, or like what I need here. I need just points here. Wrong one. Like obviously the place differential performed way better than anticipated, but where exactly did things go like different from a projection standpoint? Trying not, and yet again, this is just me kind of doing my own shit here, right? Like we'll talk, Xfinity in a second. But this is just kind of some things I look at, but like obviously you had Corey Heim as the highest guy. You had Ankrum, who was my fifth highest guy, or sixth rather. But when we then start looking at, actually, what I probably need to do is we don't need to look at value and stuff. But like yesterday, like I really, really liked it, which I said repeatedly with sheets and stuff, was the guys in like the high teens here between Ankrum, Hemrick, Enfinger, people like this, which I guess I missed on Raja as well. And really just lucked into Ankrum and Enfinger leading and stuff. But I didn't think this race was as drastic as I really don't think I missed this race as much as everything happened, because I know a lot of people were like really, really, really upset with how this race played out. And yet again, I nearly had everybody. I had somebody in each lineup pretty much run to issue and wreck. Like obviously Curry destroyed these two lineups right off the bat. Carroll breaks. Kligerman, blows, or not blows, but breaks I believe it was a Willwell or something really related to the rear end on one of the rear tires and stuff. Like, if things were as bad as this guy was saying, I shouldn't even have cashed at all, right? That's more so why I was so interested in this race, because like how did people build specifically? Like what did, maybe not even combos, but I'm very curious on the Garcia stuff, right? Because if Garcia was, if we're looking at Garcia at 47%, and him leading was very much determined on Chandler Smith not being able to get to his left rear early enough in the run to really take over. Like that I don't know. Very, very interesting. Looking at different combinations here. I want to try and see the ones that don't have Garcia and stuff. Also, what was the ownership on? So Dawson was at 30. Wood was at 25. The reason why this is important, right? Like I really hate using previous races, especially in the week, for like, oh, how is this race going to play out? But like when we look at this race, I haven't thrown stuff in SaberSim, but like if we go down here, right? And yet again, this is just where I kind of rank people in terms of speed here versus kind of where they're started and stuff. When we start looking at the 6K range specifically, like you look at where Thomas is at, right? In the Cope car, right? He's starting 20th. You look at where Leland finished, like that's where the guy starting, 20th in terms of speed has. You look at Ellis, you look at Blaine, you look at Balicki, you look at Poole, you look at Chris Wright. Obviously, well, this is wrong. I gotta update this one for good old Catherine. You look at where Green is at. You look at where Smithley is at. You look at where Alfredo's in cheap play. You look at Kyle Sieg and stuff too. So like, I think Kyle Sieg's probably the best value on the slate and stuff. But like similar to yesterday's builds, like the 5K range projects so poorly. Now it projects poorly, right? Like if people want to wreck out and tear shit up or whatever, like of course we can end up having Boyd and stuff here. But these ownerships really represent where what was, projecting to be like a, pretty crappy plays and stuff, right? So, like, if we're looking at today's slate with that, which I probably need to go ahead and throw this in SaberSim to at least have my stuff build to take a look. So I'll do that on this end here. Also, if you want to use SaberSim, say you are not just playing NASCAR DFS and stuff, but you want to use basically 3 websites in one between all the stuff that we have. Not only my projections, not only the NASCAR tools, but Cheats' projections, Goalie's projections for all the sports. You can get our core with the SaberSim optimizer and stuff with the PayDirt intuitive analytic tools as well. If you want SaberSim Ultimate, it's 320. I mean, like, this is basically 3 sites in one across the board. You get PayDirt tools, and SaberSim on any of these packages. It just depends on if you want the ability to build 5,000 lineups and use sims. Obviously you need the ultimate package and stuff like that. But these are our prices and stuff here if you want to use all the tools available on our website. So let me upload this stuff on SaberSim really fast, which for whatever reason, here we go. So kind of working backwards here, or not working backwards, but let me get that there. Let me build. I would have to imagine that the possibility, specifically if we're looking at the bottom, right? Like, if everything up top is questionable, obviously, Connor Zilic going to the rear of the field and stuff. If everything up front is pretty questionable in terms of who leads early, right? Like, if we're looking at, the people up front, obviously Justin Allgaier has been like the best guy, the best car, the best team in the Xfinity series, right? You look at Jones, who has a real chance of, like, similar to like how yesterday's lead was kind of flip flopping between Garcia, Caden, Chandler Smith, and even Lane Riggs had speed at times. I mean, hell, Lane Riggs fucking won the first 2 stages. Nicholas, Casey Kane, Jones, and Allgaier all fit that situation of being able to pretty much do that same thing for all these guys up here. And so determining where like early laps go, like that's like very, very difficult to do. One thing that I'm not a fan of, yet again, now this is just situation. Let's see if it's updated yet. Where are we at here? Yeah, so like right now, SaberSim still has Connor Zilic for 33.84 laps and 18 fast laps and stuff. Like, obviously, like, that's very much not the case of what's going to happen here. And they're projecting him for 37 points. And that's not saying SaberSim's a bad product. Obviously, they're missing on a niche sport. Clearly, the NBA playoffs and MLB and stuff like that is like, more important today and stuff. Does that make SaberSim a bad product? No. You just need to be aware, like, of what the ebbs and flows of where, NASCAR is on the totem pole and where it is wrong sometimes, but it's still a tool you can use. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is, where do I go with, fast laps and stuff? Now, granted, I already have the answer to that because I've already done I've already done my projections and stuff. But man, I really like Casey Kane today, to potentially get laps led. Oh, anyway, that's what I wanted to look at. So like I wanted to see where my grand I only had 5, right? Let me not do this, but like I really want to look at Joe's really fast here. So, like, also, literally had no idea why Infinger was, like, 10% owned. Like, that was, like, insane. Um, he's literally in Aspire affiliated truck. He's finishing in the top 5 in, like, every race. Like, that I'm, like, so confused on, like, where these ownerships, like, were coming in at on people. Like, Increment 15, like, I know everybody went Jake Garcia and Corey Heim, but, like, those are, like, massive misses, that, like, has a real chance of potentially happening today. So, like, if I go to, like, somebody who's actually smart, um, like, where did Joe finish here? Like, Joe knows what he's doing. Versus I'm trying to think of somebody who, and this isn't an insult, trying to think how to word this. Who is a person like Joe specifically plays, NASCAR, tennis, college football, or like college stuff like that. Obviously, other sports too. But like goes in know what he's doing about versus somebody who's using raw projections, like just throwing things in. So like I guess I don't want to use did Big T play? So what did Big T do based on the RPS stuff here? So like where did let me get my stuff out of here actually. Let me hmm. I mainly wanted to see what projections were pushing people. Interesting. Yeah, so like projections weren't pushing Ankrum yesterday. Interesting. Where did Bailey Curry come in at? I think we all got fucked with Curry here. Interesting. Anyway, the reason why I'm looking at this type of stuff specifically is I was thinking I want to look at one last thing here before we kind of continue. Before we look at today. So like today's race, we have a potential of, you know, a very cheap early lap leader between Parker Retzlaff and Nicholas Sanchez. Obviously Casey Kane's at 9.5. But if we're trying to figure out where the optimal lineup, that was the last thing I want to do here, actually, or not optimal. I want to look at the winning lineup really fast here. So this is, let me see. That lineup may have actually been given to me in my stuff, which is very disappointing. Well, no, I wouldn't because I would not have had Raja Cruz. Can I look back and see what stuff was given me here? This is yesterday's stuff. Yet again, we are an hour and 42 away from the slate. I'll actually start talking about the Truck Series slate in a second here. Yeah, like see all my stuff. Even if I took, well, obviously we're looking at, but like all my stuff yesterday was like Jack Wood and Sutton together. So like where does this lineup show up? Because I have a feeling that this type of build, regardless of the amount of crashes that we had, with how bad the value range is yesterday and how bad it is today, 2 6K plays are I would think are gonna be likely. I probably won't have it with because I won't have Garcia. But looking back at yesterday's, like, here we are, like, right off the bat, right? Like, obviously, Tyler Ingram and Enfinger are, like, super, super high. They're the next exposed amount of drivers here. So, like, it would have been my 102nd lineup based on projected score yesterday that would have finished second. Um, so obviously, if Jones, Tanner Gray being taken out and stuff, Crafton running issues and stuff. But anyway, the reason why I'm looking at here is I have a feeling this is probably the builds that are going to be working today with that. So let me move this back here so I can look at today's thing and look at the builds that it's going to. Let me see what the distribution was here. Interesting. First guy entering more than one lineup is very, very interesting. So a lot of 150 guys got absolutely eviscerated. Or not even 150 guys. A lot of multi-entry guys got eviscerated here, right? In yesterday's race. Anyway, so the reason I'm looking at this, right, is that's so interesting that so many things happen, and there's like, I mean, obviously we had that 150 guy here, but nearly all these lineups are just single entry users. What a rough. Oh, here's Pierce. Let's see what else. Interesting, very, very interesting. And then, I mean, obviously, if I'm looking at everybody else, this is where my highest was there yesterday. Like, if we're building today, right? Okay, so like now I've kind of looked at everything I wanted to, at least for yesterday. That's why I just went live. I figured I'd be doing that for fucking 30 minutes before we went live anyway. I just figured I'd do it now. When we're looking at today's race and we're looking at the builds, I'm really curious on where things are going to go. So it seems to me where are things early? The difference between Nicholas Sanchez and Casey Kane are very minuscule, but yet again, like I think these guys are pretty important to the slate. And not only from a build perspective, but what they end up doing. Like, do they both lead together? Do they cannibalize each other and stuff like here? I think Parker's out to lunch from a DFS perspective, right? So like we're basically working with a race that has, your top two starters not in play. I don't want to X them out. I just want to cover them. We then have to figure out where these other guys fall in line between this early run and stuff. Like William Sawalich has struggled tremendously recently, right? So we're not using William and stuff. So we're practically like Casey Kane's going to be behind Parker Retzloff, okay? So he's going to already be racing with Sawalich, with Jones, with Jesse Love, whatever the case may be. So if Casey's leading, it's most likely, possibly like lap 8, 9, if he gets the lead early, right? Lap 8, 9, whatever, or runs him down at lane. Like it seems to me like Sanchez is like your early lap leader today, right? And at 8,000, because we're probably chasing Allgaier. We have, quite a few drivers in the starting grid, similar to yesterday's with like how Enfinger, Anchorman stuff, who are drivers who, and again, I'm just looking at intermediate tracks this year. Obviously, at this point, with the amount of people in this series and new rides, it's kind of pointless to look back at last year's intermediates and stuff. Ideally, I'd want to use Dover and Charlotte, but I don't believe the amount of new drivers in here and new places, new teams really make that useful. That's why I'm just looking at these three here. But like when we're looking at people who are finishing up front, who a lot of these races who are starting somewhat deep in the field, in the teens, we're looking at obviously Creed, who's also kind of struggled this year in terms of his speed. We have Taylor Gray, who has realistically probably been like a couple breaks away from actually winning a couple races in situations. Sammy Smith as well. Austin Hill. We have Eckes. Obviously Love and Allgaier and stuff here. And so if projections potentially are, or we don't, yet again, people fucking wreck out or whatever, it changes a lot. Or even still, maybe it doesn't because nobody's playing the guys who are projecting bad anyway, unless people are expecting chaos again today, which I think I still think it leans green. I mean, if people want to wreck and wreck out and have guys who should literally be finishing 30th, finish like 18th and stuff, like that just sounds like Texas to me. Like, obviously we can't, expect, just fucking wreck facts at these races and stuff. Nicholas Sanchez at $8,000. It's probably going to be in a lot of lineups because he's starting third, potential lap leader and stuff. And then we're being forced to play, from a projection standpoint, so many people who are looking good from a raw projection. So like we're not playing Greg, right? You're not playing Patrick. You're not playing Solace, making his like first ever start, right? Yet again, unless people want to wreck out and stuff, like the upside of these drivers back here are very, very limited. We can throw Chris Wright in that as well. Okay, so we lose like this back half of the field because they should finish, anywhere from like 7 to -2 positions of where they start, right? So none of them really hit value from here. And yet again, this is, how I view things, how I go through and analyze a race or whatever, or a slate. And we're an hour and 30 minutes away from the start of the slate. What was I saying? We then look at like Harrison Burton, right? Who has performed very, very well in his AM racing car, starting 29th. We have Brennan Poole, who has been performing very well in this car, for Alpha Beta Prime. Obviously, you have Deanna Dye, who can like pass people and stuff here. And so when we start going through this field of like who actually projects decently well, and then we combine that with like a build perspective and stuff, like remove these guys. Ryan Ellis, he's been very viable in situations, but he's starting 23rd. He should, and granted, this is where he's been running. He has been finishing better in the race, if I'm not entirely mistaken. But he's usually starting in the back, farther back in the field. And so like we lose another individual driver here. And so if we're put in a situation to where we're like chasing 6K range, we're chasing like 6K guys, right? For like the bottom of the value, where from at least from everything we've talked about here, right? We would expect Nicholas Sanchez, Jones, one of these guys, to possibly get the lead, with probably Nicholas being the main favorite to be in lineups because he's $8,000. Obviously, we've talked about how he can get the lead very quickly. His speed in comparison to Parker Retzloff, and him at $8,000, you play him with other 6K guys. I just want to kind of talk this through here. Let's see, where would we be at here? So, so we're probably working with like $9,400 for anywhere from like 9,000 to 9,500 on average for your remaining 3 drivers, in lineups and stuff. So what does that type of build potentially look like? Okay, that potentially makes, Anthony Alfredo, and obviously, I'm not really talking the 6K guys here because like they're gonna just be used for value of whoever you need to fit in. Obviously, I like Kyle Sieg, but like Poole, Jeb Burton, Williams, whatever, right? Um, but that's gonna lean to probably Alfredo, Harrison Burton, Daniel Dye carrying ownership regardless of the builds and stuff. So it's really gonna come down to probably, you know, 1v1s on what expensive guys you end up using, right? Like if everybody likes Justin Allgaier, you know, and we use him with our hypothetical, like 92 to 9,600, on average for your remaining 3 guys, right? That's going to probably bump us down anywhere from like 82 to 85 for your last 2 guys in on your stuff, okay? So then do you then potentially take, another guy who can run up front, maintain a running position all day, somebody like Jones or Casey Kane, and end up in the 7K range, or do you take 2 8K guys or whatever? And I think that's really what caused um, Tyler Ankrum, uh, what's his name, Enfinger, um, to like come in at drastically lower ownership than probably what they should have been because like Ankrum, Parker, Kligerman, Enfinger, and stuff like here, like these were like your pay up guys who you would like have to like the lineups that used them, specifically went and chased them and stuff. Whereas like probably from a raw projection standpoint, today would probably lean to using, a double of like, 2 8K guys or whatever, right? Um, and this is, with using Allgaier and stuff here. And so I kind of like this, and obviously we've like talked through this enough. And obviously, if you have my projection, you can see who I like, right? But like building, going through of looking at different builds and constructions and stuff, I like Casey Kane at 9,500. Um, I like Sam Mayer at 10,500. Like these are lineups that I don't know if you'll naturally get to, but I think they're viable. I like Taylor Gray at 84. Um, These are guys that I really kind of want to go out of my way to at least have exposure to, even if I'm using Justin Allgaier, right? Like Allgaier projects as probably the favorite to win this race, favorite based on speed, favorite based on long run, whatever, right? Um, but like going through and breaking down a slate, like, or at least is how I do it. Um, and it just so happens that I think we had a slate yesterday to where construction might be somewhat similar and paying attention to where the field didn't go yesterday. Um, could be very, very, what is it? Could be very, very, good. Um, Especially like I only did the 5 and I had 3. I just don't understand how situations where like I don't even know how 3 of these lineups even cash. Like what the fuck is the field doing? Um, like I don't think I had a single lineup that didn't have somebody like literally not even finish the race. Um, Oh, and compare that with how fast the field is gonna be lapping people and going a lap down. Um, like, I think this is a race where, I would specifically wanna target people who can start in the top half of the field and stay there. And specifically, if I can get you at, like if I can get drivers who are, like, $8,000, whatever, who can very easily finish in the top 10, I think that's the route I would end up going. Um, we look at Carson Quaffle. He's 88, but he's been a top, 15 driver in these races here. Anthony Alfredo scares me a lot. He's 69. He's been decent on speed, but we look at his last finishes and stuff. Like he's had a lot of mechanical failures and stuff. And here, let's go ahead and get. Oh, my screen just died over there. That's nice. I'll let that come back in a second. Thank you, NVIDIA, for not updating my graphics drivers beforehand. So do I have to? Are you gonna load again? My screen literally died over here. It's because I haven't updated my NVIDIA graphics. Like if I have a ton of tabs open on Chrome, there we go. This tab literally just goes black for like 30 seconds. Like we look at his races and stuff. Like that's not good. A lap down here. Lap down. Well, I guess that's more. I guess I'm just envisioning how he started with more issues and stuff. Like this one's running, but like mechanical issue. Who at Phoenix when they had to pit under green. Um, so maybe my worry isn't as bad here. But then again, like this track has been very very rough on equipment so far. For trucks, I haven't paid attention to the ARCA race right now because I know that's going on. But I like Kyle Sieg way more than Anthony Alfredo. I like Harrison Burton way more than Anthony Alfredo. I think we can very easily find that $600. I like Poole more than Alfredo. I'm concerned about Alfredo. I have a lot of concerns about it. And I think if we're yet again you know thinking of how people are constructed and stuff, I think Alfredo's probably going to be pretty popular today. And I think that's a real kind of questionable situation there. You also compare that with. Now he might be up here. I don't remember where Alfredo is. Oh no, he is 13th on average. But where are we at here? On like 140s. I know everybody else is at kind of on these runs. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's kind of fishy for Alfredo. I'm very very concerned about him. Let's see. Any other major questions or whatever? What's going on here? I'm glad you're able to catch me live, Daniels. Let's see. Speaking of what a cool session that was about to run. Okay. How many cars are projected to be on lead lap? I don't project that, or I don't project for that. I'd imagine we're probably looking at like 13 on lead lap if we go green, and we finish the way it should probably be anywhere from like 17 to 13 drivers. I mean, you look at the huge discrepancy in speed here between these guys. Um, like I guess probably this range here of like lap times being on lead lap and stuff, but I don't project for that. Let's see. If you don't play Noah, who is I don't know who Noah is. Let me look. Hold on. Noah. I assume an autocorrect or something. Correct that. I don't know who Noah is. Oh, Nicholas. Okay, I was like, yeah. See, like if you don't play Nicholas, I think it's either like Brandon Jones primarily, probably, or Casey Kane. Like that's why Jones and Casey Kane are like so in play today. Um, like Allgaier has a phenomenal long run car, right? Like I'm very excited to see what Allgaier can do in this run because he really really doesn't fall off, but he's not going to have that short run speed, up until they make adjustments, able to control the race and whatever when he gets up front. Like he's right at like 140s, right? Because he's getting ready for long run stuff. Um, whereas Casey Kane, like easily 142s, like you look at Nicolas Sanchez 142s as well. You look at Jones, straddling, slightly faster than what Allgaier is doing. So like, actually, that's on Iowa. Okay. So like, I think Jones, Casey Kane, are very very much in play to potentially lead lap state, and especially if we do get a situation to where, guys miss a corner, guys get in traffic, whatever, specifically with the leader in lap traffic and stuff. Like I think those are the front runners to potentially lead laps if Nicholas runs into issues or if Allgaier isn't able to get to lead within like the end of stage one or whatever. And I like them, yet again, if we're playing guys up front and we're expecting a lot of the field to get lapped or running issues or whatever, like I like Jones, I like Casey Kane today. for those reasons. Really past that, I can't really think of anything else to do or talk about. We are an hour and 20 minutes away from the green flag. That I think those are mainly my thoughts on this race. I'm gonna go build and goof around and see what I end up getting here. But I like Casey Kane a one off, man. I really think he can perform pretty decently well. And I'm concerned about Alfredo. Those are my two main takes, I guess. Also, Die versus Jeb versus Alfredo versus Josh. I'll defer that to what my projections are saying, and or defer to where they would be on this thing here. So, like, yet again, this is just where they run at speed on these races, not where they finish or whatever. Actually, their finishing position has nothing to do with this, with how I rank them on this end. But that's where Die is. That's where Jeb is at. That's where Alfredo's at, and then this is where Josh is at. That's kind of why, like, I like Kyle Sieg, at 6,200. Not really worried about what he did at Vegas, but I'm more than happy to go after Kyle Sieg in this range here. Really, other than that, I think we have more than enough to discuss and talk about, or at least you guys. I mean, I think we've talked about enough here. I've been here for like 50 minutes or so, and I think you should have an idea of the people that I like and stuff like that. Or you can just default to projections and stuff like that. I'll see you guys, I guess, next week for Talladega, which is always a very heavy, time-consuming weekend for me since I hand build everything. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.